This was back in October of 2016. Me and my family were driving to visit our relatives in New Jersey. We all had our electronics packed and presents stacked to the left of me in the second row of my mom's Lexus with my dad driving. My mom, older sister, and older brother were in my dad's minivan, also with gifts. We started driving around 11:30 a.m. from Chesapeake, Virginia, and it is currently around 3:30 p.m. We were in the middle of DC traffic for a half hour, so it took longer. My dad was behind my mom the whole car ride, so we couldn't lose each other. I was listening with my AirPods to my Amazon Music playlist with Ice Cube, Green Day, etc. Later, we were driving through the roads with trees surrounding us with dozens of other cats. Around that time, I stopped listening to some of my music and started watching these new supposed killer clown sightings. Apparently, these odd sightings were being spotted all over the US, including Nebraska. I just knew it was some goofy teenagers trying to scare people. I'm not stupid. I was also surprised by how brave these kids were. Some of them just stood completely still when cops pulled over to investigate. It's been more than 2 hours and we're still dozens of miles away from our destination. There are only two other cars now and we're obviously getting tired at that point, so we're trying to look for a gas station to get gas, snacks, and go potty. We found one in 5 minutes and did everything. I got a 2-bar Milky Way, which was pretty small, that I finished when we got back to our cars. My dad did the gas for the Lexus while mom did the minivan. In the next 10 minutes, we were back on the road with me and dad still behind the rest of the family in the Lexus right on their tail. A half hour went by and I didn't want to sleep at all in cars during road trips because last year I got a neck cramp. I decided to check my phone and it was around 7:30 p.m. My AirPods were being charged from the back row behind me attached to the car's cable plugger. I then looked out my window, which was just darkness full of trees with a clear sunset light above them. I know we were somewhere in Maryland, but every time we're driving through forest areas, it just looks like we're in the middle of nowhere in Idaho or something. We were the only car on the road around this time. Just as I reached my hand back to check my AirPods percentage, the Lexus went into a halt, obviously causing a loud screech. My heart skipped like 4 beats, thinking we were in a car crash or somehow drove into a pond, which could have been way worse. My dad turned to face me with shock. "Are you okay?" I said yes. I rested my head to catch a few breaths as I saw my dad open the door to check out the front of the vehicle in almost total darkness with mellowish blue and indigo light. I unbuckled and checked if my phone was still in my pocket. I then stepped out of the vehicle to check with my dad on what happened. I assumed it was another stupid deer who decided to run in front of the vehicle instead of just to wait due to us being the only two cars on this road. I told dad this, but it took him a few seconds to say he viewed the thing as bipedal and not hopping in the air. I was confused and a bit surprised at the same time after he said that. I just accepted that it was a trick of the car lights and was seeing things or something. I then called mom to say that a deer went in front of our Lexus and almost hit us, making us violently pull over and almost crash. She asked if there were any dents. Dad said no. She said they're now in the town where our relatives live, and they'll meet us just 5 minutes away actually. She then said she parked in a restaurant parking lot to wait for us. We said bye and hung up to get back into the vehicle. When I was thinking about our relatives' town, I was then confused about how it looks like we're in the middle of a dense jungle just to be 5 minutes away from our destination and not being able to see any building lights in front of us. I know 5 minutes can be a while, but time flies these days. Now it's not even funny. As we were gonna walk back into the vehicle, I noticed something odd. It was these peculiar footprints where the deer ran into the woods. I thought and wanted to say it was just a stupid random deer, but the prints looked similar to a primate's, almost to like a chimpanzee or something, or even a human. My dad asked if I was okay and if I missed anything. It took me a second to respond. I pointed out the primate-like footprints and immediately he almost looked confused and started to look very puzzled. Now, I used to look at Bigfoot photos and videos all the time back when I was in elementary school, but I'm older now to think it was just a man in a suit to get their attention. I was getting angry thinking my brain was playing tricks on me, but didn't seem so due to having the same puzzled expression. I told him I just wanted to peek through the dark leaves if I could see the deer or supposed chimpanzee that escaped from a zoo. He didn't mind, but since it was getting darker, he wanted me to hurry and that the rest of our family was waiting for us. I grabbed out my phone to turn on the flashlight. I slowly placed my right shoe over the cement and onto the dark green grass. I shined my light through to see anything, but it was all just darkness with green and tiny openings with fading blue sunset. I shrugged my shoulders and turned around to go back to Dad and Alexis. Instead, I met back with Alexis with no Dad in sight. I was shocked to my core to see my dad literally gone in thin air. For whatever reasons, I first thought he was taking a leak on the other side of the forest, so I waited another 40 seconds watching my own back, only to hear the same repeating crickets. I then called him, but apparently there were no bars at all. Meanwhile, we're only 5 minutes away from our stop. That made me sick to my stomach. My dad literally disappeared into thin air. This gave me the decision to check that jungly opening again. It was obviously getting darker out, so I made a quick movement into the trees. Probably around that time I had balls of steel, because I took 15 regular steps into which seemed like nothingness. They didn't seem too big because I saw a few good large openings with clear sunset light peeking through just only 10 feet away. When I got another 5 feet, I heard tiny ripples, only to turn out I stumbled upon a big, huge lake. It looked exactly like my grandma's lake in Skaneateles, New York, just 10 times smaller. What also surprised me was that none of us heard any splashing when we were hanging out around the Lexus. Like, why didn't we feel a slight breeze? I took approximately 5 more steps onto the warm, wet sand. I still didn't see my father. I always had a fear of something dragging me into rivers, so I immediately stepped 15 feet away from the shore, almost back into the woods, just having the leaves 3 feet above my head. I bumped my left shoulder into a tall tree, and when I turned around, it was a missing person photo. It was stapled to my head level, 5'9", and it looked very old, like 15 years or so, with a grown man on it. It said he was last seen walking around this river in September 2004. I didn't want to be looking forward to being a victim in a lake murder incident, so I turned and started speed walking back through the dark and scary woods, hoping there were nothing around me and that there were phone bars so I can call mom or even the cops. As I was starting to stress out a lot, this raised a red flag. Why was there a missing person sign in the middle of nowhere between a jungly road? In just a few seconds, I saw a tall male deer walking past me. I clenched my fists and waved a bit with temper due to thinking it was that deer was the cause of all of this and the reason I'm in this scary situation. All of a sudden, I heard a lady crying. It was very faint, but I knew it was coming from the river right behind me. It sounded just like La Leona, the weeping woman, the folklore of a cheated mother who drowned her 2 children way down in Mexico of jealous rage, and her spirit has haunted the waters ever since. This was the most mortified I've ever been, that I couldn't mumble a simple word. I thought if I did anything I would die right then and there. The crying got closer as I heard hands splashing on the quiet shore now 15 feet away from me. I then heard sounds that related to a creature walking ashore, and that's when a creepy but simple sound turned from a speed walk to a full-on sprint. Fuck this, I mumbled as I immediately sprinted for it back to Alexis, not looking an inch behind me. I never thought of anything but my dad and tried to bust through the door of the Lexus as soon as I got there. But as I was sprinting, this confused me. How would La Leona be here all the way in New Jersey? But that thought was interrupted as I heard a slashing sound by something loud and wet. The deer got killed. I heard a big chunk of flesh ripping out of the deer's stomach. I almost tripped onto dry leaves and sticks on the ground, and then I saw a long-lasting shadow of a bridesmaid just below my left knee. I felt her wet hand grab my right leg. Bitch! I roundhouse kicked her right in the face with all my might with my right leg as my eyes were shut slightly to concentrate. But when I looked back, nothing was there but the poor dead deer. I got back up and again sprinted back to Alexis, just now 5 feet away from me. I was crying like a baby who actually saw something traumatizing. 2 minutes later, another minivan but green was coming by. I didn't want to deal with a possible kidnapper, so I hid tightly behind the moving shadows of our Lexus. Suddenly, the green minivan pulled over right behind the Lexus. My heart sank into my stomach. I didn't know what I was going to do. There could be multiple people with rope, guns, and knives. Instead, I heard a little boy talking loudly. It seemed their window was open. It was a family of 4. 1 dad, 1 mom, and 2 possibly 6-year-old twins. I heard the dad call out if anybody out there is alright, so I popped my head up slowly to not scare them. I immediately told them everything that happened, but right as I finished explaining, my mom came back because it's been an hour and that we weren't answering her calls. My older brother and older sister were just confused and stunned at the same time as my mom walked over to hug me hard. During the police investigation, they apparently found my dad. We were obviously so ecstatic. As he was recovering from behind a broken tree, he said he just blacked out, but that doesn't really explain how he just vanished a few seconds in front of me. I felt like it was just best to never mention it. The only important part was that he's back and okay. My uncle, who we were going to visit, is also a cop, but he was sleeping because he took a night shift that week. Obviously, he was glad my dad was alright and none of us got harmed. As we were waiting next to both our Lexus and minivan, cops investigating the marks on the dead deer, and with the other family still aside to make sure we were okay, a cop came up to me and asked if I had seen this man before. I've never seen the man in the picture before, so I told the cop no. Apparently, the guy in the photo was a serial killer who lured men and children near that exact same lake. Accordingly, this happened from the late 90s to mid 2000s, before he was caught right after in 2006 and sentenced to death row. One of the victims was the guy I saw in the missing person photo stapled to the tree. Later, the more I thought about the crying lady behind me, which I still keep secret to this day, could have been the soul of one of the lost victims, who keeps trying to drown the person she believes was her killer. It's so devastating whenever I think about it. It's now late October of 2024 as I'm telling this, almost a Halloween. Right now, I'm at San Diego State University as a senior. It's really great here. I even have a Latina girlfriend and we're gonna hang out at the college costume party on Halloween night. I just know if I mention this to anybody, even my girlfriend, they'll probably just think I was mental then, due to how whack it was. But sometimes the truth isn't good enough. Anyway, I really hope this doesn't happen whenever I'm on a road trip ever again.